Znezana Novakovic Bursac.
Esteemed Secretary and advisors, dear colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important assembly and to convey warm greetings from the Orthodox Serbian people from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to tell you some of my thoughts about actual challenges for all society we are facing. We live in a world characterized by enormously fast development of technology, especially digital and informational, which is not unaccompanied by the development of social relations and human sciences, unfortunately. It seems that the faith and hope as essential elements of all religions, which as a crucial ties were saving and holding people together, helping them to overcome existing challenges, are overall suppressed or insufficiently present. Traditionally, value systems are collapsing and new ones are not building. All of this brings us to the situation where hopelessness and alienation are widespread in so-called developed societies, while material wealth and technological solutions are more accessible than ever before in history. At this moment, it seems to me that we are facing the answer to the question that Jesus Christ, but also Saint Sava, asked us before. The question is, if a man gains the whole world and loses his soul, what is the purpose? Man has gained the power to rule the world, but he also created artificial intelligence, depleted nature's resources, destroyed biodiversity, and implemented so many inequalities between people. In a time and societies dominated by profit, virtual communication, and perhaps in the near future artificial intelligence, the crucial important task is how to effectively re-establish the Christian values that are in fact values of all other religions too, values of fraternity, solidarity, equality, freedom, and how to re-establish the balance among nature and man. How to protect children, family, and the environment when the market and consumer values dominate the media and political contents. Those questions are especially related to Europe, which, as a most developed continent, was created and developed on Christian values and principles, but it seems often that it gives up of that basis, making it divergent from itself. I think, dear fellow parliamentarians, that the answer and solutions are to a significant extent in our hands. Parliaments must again, on behalf of the citizens who elected them, become a place where sustainable policies and laws will be passed, the main purpose of which will be the protection of values, human dignity, the environment, and equal access to resources. Individual freedom and human rights must be protected, but we must find solutions that will avoid the trap of spreading destructive ideas under the guise of human rights. To recognize and stop spreading of hatred and destructive ideas under the slogan of freedom of speech, especially in the virtual world. The diagnosis of our society sickness are quite clear, but the treatment measures must be quick and efficient so that we don't regret the missed opportunity in the near future. Our responses must be decisive, clear, concrete, and based on human Christian values, and we will not make a mistake. Our faith must be effective because faith without deeds is dead. And I will end this speech with the words of Saint Sava, which he stated in the Žiča ceremony in 1220. Because there is no right life without a true and enlightened faith in God, Nor can a true profession of faith bring us before the Lord without good deeds, but we must have the both to be a perfect man of God and not to limp due to the lack of any of them. Because, as the apostle said, saving faith works through love. So, dear fellows parliamentarians, let's work in love and with faith in God. Thank you.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ τη συνάδελφο.
Thank you very much, colleague. And now allow me to give the floor again to our colleague from Iran, whose paper will only be read in English because we do not have interpretation from Iranian. So we will only read out to you his text in English. So our colleague from Iran will take the floor.
Madam, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues and members of the Interparliamentary Assembly on Orthodoxy, ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely delighted and honored to have this opportunity today, once again, as the representative of the Iranian Armenian community in the Islamic Parliament of Iran, to stand before you, my esteemed colleagues and friends, and engage in fruitful discussions.
Over the past 3 decades, this assembly has played a constructive
This assembly has played a constructive role in strengthening dialogue, cooperation and understanding among nations and parliaments, emphasizing our common beliefs,
ideas, expressing shared concerns, striving for constructive solutions, and ultimately strengthening the bonds that unite us.
While the present age has provided unprecedented opportunities for communication and easier access for all, it has also brought about new dilemmas. The proliferation of misinformation and deliberate manipulations of information for group interests are among the challenges that have targeted our unity and convergence. Continuing with the discussion of future challenges, I would like to touch upon a topic that, in my opinion, is the most important and fundamental challenge facing humanity today. Dear friends and colleagues, terrorism knows no boundaries, and unfortunately, my country has not been spared from the devastating consequences of this inhumane act. The bombings at the Prime Minister's office on August 13, 1981, the bombings at the Islamic Republic Party headquarters on June 28, 1981, carried out by terrorist group, and the recent terrorist attack on the building of the Islamic Consultative Assembly on June 7, 2017, resulting in deaths of several civilians, including Armenian citizens, are just a few examples of the acts of terror and violence against the willpower and aspirations of my country's people. These incidents serve as evidence that terrorists are willing to resort to any means to achieve their wicked objectives. The Islamic Republic of Iran is one of the victims of terrorism, has always stood at the forefront in combating this heinous phenomenon. We are ready to extend a helping hand to all countries that are determined to collectively fight this human scourge, recognizing that terrorism knows no borders and is a common enemy of humanity. We firmly believe that this battle is not exclusive to any nation or community, but requires the collective efforts of all nations that value peace, justice, and security. Through mutual cooperation and joint anti-terrorism initiatives, we are prepared to effectively combat this global threat. Unfortunately, there are countries which consider the way to fight against the willpower of the people to depend on supporting and providing for terrorism. They even impose various new forms of terrorism on the people of the world. The inhumane and discriminatory actions of the United States of America in supporting the most detestable extremist group in Iran, the I.A.O. terrorist organization, the imposition of unlawful and unilateral sanctions, the expansion of terrorism scope to the concept of economic terrorism, and the recent oppressive and illegitimate actions by the Republic of Azerbaijan in pressuring the Armenian population of the Karabakh region through the blockade of the humanitarian Lachin corridor and cutting off Armenians' access to their basic needs, particularly medicine and food, serve as examples of state-sponsored terrorism and inhumane acts. In this part of my speech, I would like to express sincere gratitude to the countries that have stood beside us in the fight against terrorism. The recent actions of the Albanian government in raiding the headquarters of the I.A.O terrorist organization, which happened in the light of the rule of law and the fight against organized crime and corruption, give us hope that achieving a safer and more peaceful world requires increased cooperation and global convergence. I would also like to take this opportunity to emphasize the strategic approach of the Islamic Republic of Iran in supporting human rights, including the rights of religious minorities, especially Armenian Christians. As a representative of Armenian Christians in the Islamic Consultative Assembly, I am proud to declare that the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran has gained commendable reputation by supporting the rights of all individuals and followers of divine religions. In the Iranian constitution and other laws, rights for minorities are recognized, and I will mention some of them. The right to perform religious ceremonies, the right to religious education and training based on one's faith, the right to personal affairs based on one's religion, the right to swear on one's holy book, the right to have parties and associations, as well as the allocation of a specific budget for the accepted rights of followers of divine religions in Iran. Therefore, we have implemented comprehensive policies that guarantee freedom of religion, promote interfaith harmony, and emphasize the rights of religious minorities. The experiences and achievements of the Islamic Republic in this regard, alongside Iran's special attention to the principle of good neighborliness and the strategic policy of supporting a peace-based discourse, can serve as a model for others striving to uphold human rights and promote religious unity. I am pleased to announce that recently, along with my colleagues in the Islamic Consultative Assembly, we have enacted a law that allows followers of all divine religions in Iran to enjoy the highest employment and social opportunities based on meritocracy. We believe that by creating an environment based on respect, understanding, and equal opportunities for all, we can build a society that values the rights and dignity of every individual. In conclusion, while addressing the challenges and prospects of confronting these new challenges, we must recognize the importance of strengthening dialogue and cooperation among divine religions. By expanding and strengthening a discourse based on respect and peace, we can enhance mutual understanding and international cooperation. I believe that the Interparliamentary Assembly on Orthodoxy has the opportunity to play a key role in this international effort and strengthen coordination and unity among religions and nations. Our collective efforts provide the capacity to shape a brighter future for humanity and its role in society. At the end, I declare our readiness to host the upcoming assembly of the I.A.O in Iran and invite your esteemed colleagues to visit one of the two ancient cities of Isfahan or Tabriz, which have been known for centuries as one of the main centers of peaceful coexistence between Christians and Muslims in the region. By visiting this space of collaboration and coexistence among divine religions and drawing inspiration from it, we can continue the constructive discussions and sessions of this assembly in the coming year. End of the English translation.
پاستانی و زیبای اصفهان یا تبریز که قرنها به عنوان یکی از اصلی‌ترین مراکز همزیستی مسالمت‌آمیز مسیحیان و مسلمانان در منطقه شناخته می‌شود، ضمن بازدید از این فضای همکاری و همزیستی ادیان الهی و الگوبرداری از آن به ادامه بحث‌ها و نشست‌های سازنده این مجمع در سال آینده بپردازیم. Thank you. Mr. General Secretary, with your permission, on behalf of the Parliament of Iran, I would like to give some gifts to the esteemed member of the Secretariat.
Thank you very much. Mr. Savertian will give the presents, and we shall hear our colleagues from Armenia. 3 of them, they will speak in turn.
The floor is now given. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Savertian, for your paper and for the gifts offered to the colleagues. Now, we shall call to the podium Mr. Sisak Gabrielyan.
Dear colleagues, I'm pleased to be here in Chalkidiki today at the 30th anniversary of the Interparliamentary Assembly of Orthodoxy. It's symbolic that 30 years ago in this same place and on the same days in this unique interparliamentary platform was established. I would like to extend my warm congratulations on the 30th anniversary of the Interparliamentary Assembly of Orthodoxy. In this jubilee year, we can confidently state that the Assembly, during its 30 years old history, has been successfully fulfilling the tasks set for itself. It is difficult to overestimate the work of the Interparliamentary Assembly, aimed at maintaining and developing the place and role of Orthodoxy culture in the modern world. I would like to emphasize the role of I.A.O. in creating a unique platform for cooperating for parliamentarians from different countries who are united by Christian values, common approaches to protecting the rights and religious freedom of Christians and promoting the policy of peace. In this regard, I would like to emphasize the importance of the publication of the volume Hagia Sophia, the Churches of the Wisdom of God around the world, and its translation into several languages. It plays an important role in informing the world about the destruction of Christian historical and cultural monuments. And in this case, I suggest taking steps to include the electronic version of this book in major digital libraries of the world, and even sell it on a different platform like Kindle, because the young generation now reading the book in the platforms. For example, I prefer to read the books in Kindle. I know we have translation in many languages. Maybe we will talk about that, and we can download that book in different platforms. So I would like to talk about a little bit about Armenian and Nagorno-Karabakh, and I give my thanks to my colleague from Iran. So that's why I will talk about maybe tomorrow. So once again, taking the opportunity, I congratulate all of us on the occasion of 30th anniversary of I.A.O. and wish successful and fruitful work for the benefit of all the peoples of the member countries of the Interparliamentary Assembly of Orthodoxy. Thank you.
Αντικαταστώντας τον
replacing
τον προεδρεύοντα,
the chair, I would like to call on the podium Mr. Mohim Salaba from Palestine.
شكرا جزيلا. يعني أنا لدي بعض
Thank you. I have some remarks. I will not be long. I won't be long because previous speakers have already spoken thoroughly in detail about certain topics. But when we speak of Christian values, this reminds me and reminds everyone of the circumstances, the conditions and situations that prevail in the birthplace where such Christian values started from. And I am referring to Palestine, which is the birthplace of Christianity. In reality, when in fact, when I came here, and literally when I left Palestine, when I departed, my concern was to feel safe from the attacks and hostilities of the occupation army and the attacks from the settlers, because you see, this is a system that prevails for the time being. I hope such practices are terminated soon, but I have to admit that I'm rather disappointed because I don't believe that such practices will end shortly in Palestine. On the contrary, there are people who wanted to consolidate such practices and hostilities and obvious violations of human rights in Palestine. And, you know, people should be informed about the developments, especially the last, what has happened the last weeks from the settlers who are under the auspices of the Israeli occupation army against the Palestinian territories and residents. If you surf on the web, if you just go online and surf in the social media, you will see all those attacks launched by terrorists, Israeli settlers. And what the Israeli gangs of settlers do is not unknown, as well as the state authorities, even alienation or appropriation of territories. Even the Patriarchate of Jerusalem is receiving attacks from settlers. And I think Mr. Mygdalis is well aware of what is going on in Palestine and all the hostilities, expropriations, and the arbitrary use and abuse of the property of the Patriarchate. A few days ago, Israeli settlers prayed in the church of Prophet Eliah in Haifa. And when they were asked, why are you praying here, because there are other places of worship for the Jews, the answer was the following: this is where one of our prophets has been buried. So what is the message conveyed by such a response, such an answer? That they are planning actually to seize this place. And even on Holy Saturday, there were hostilities even on the part of the Israeli police that has set a certain number that could not be exceeded. And we are talking about Saturday before Easter. So speaking of Christian values, what we need is mechanisms to protect and preserve the implementation of such Christian values, which are an integral part of the pan-human values where many people and many countries believe in. I believe that the important institution through which we can consolidate Christian values is that of family. Family as an institution has been targeted by many circles, many countries, even parliaments in certain countries, where the effort is to establish mentalities, mindsets, or values that threaten the family institution. Because wherever family exists as an institution, values prevail. So if we leave this chaos that is being imposed by some, unfortunately, we cannot protect the implementation of Christian values or some acceptable human values. As a result, those societies will suffer the unavoidable decline, collapse. I hope in your final declaration we can condemn and denounce the hostilities on the part of the occupation forces in Palestine. In the draft declaration, there is some reference, but the wording is not enough as a procedural wording for the occupation in Palestine, in Cyprus, and in any other place where there is occupation. So I hope there is a clear condemnation. I hope there is a serious wording denouncing, condemning such practices and tactics that are still ongoing in Palestine. And moreover, I hope we make a reference to and condemn any insult against any religious doctrine, irrespective of religion. There is a difference between creative criticism and insult, offensive speech, which does not fall within the context of the freedom of speech, and such insults against religions and against religious beliefs should be condemned. Finally, I wish every success to this assembly. And on the part of the Palestinian National Assembly, thank you for the invitation and thank you for having given me the chance to speak in front of you.
And now, our excellent colleague from Egypt, members of the I.A.O, members of the Secretariat, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation to be present at the 30th anniversary General Assembly of the I.A.O, which is an organization that aims at consolidating Christian values and way of life. Over the last 30 years, many activities have made us proud, and I wish more such actions for many more decades to come. I am a Christian Egyptian member of Parliament. Herodotus, the Greek historian, spoke about Egypt when he visited it 500 years BC. He mentioned Egypt as the gift, the present by the river Nile. Egypt and Greece are cradles of the most ancient civilizations of the world. They have been connected even prior to Alexander the Great. And once again, I want to renew my invitation to you to follow the trip of the Holy Family to Egypt. The family Sacred Family stayed in Egypt for 3.5 years. This is where Jesus Christ walked after Palestine, where he was born, and there are 25 points in this course, 25 points from Sinai to Ashdod and then back to Sinai. And this year, in June, Egypt celebrated the first anniversary of its intangible cultural heritage. It became part of the intangible cultural heritage by the UNESCO, this tracing the stepping stones of the sacred family. And the Parliament of Egypt actually supported this trip, this travel of the sacred family as part of its immaterial, intangible heritage. And it would be good to have to reinforce interparliamentary collaboration between Egypt, Greece, and Cyprus, and the project Nostos under the auspices of President Al-Sisi. I was very pleased last night to see a video about the monastery of Saint Catherine, built by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian. And as a teacher, as I want to say that art is a soft power in parliamentary relations. This is why I am suggesting to organize workshops for the revival of the Byzantine art in Egypt. Thank you very much, and congratulations once again. Thank you very much. And the floor to our General Secretary. Thank you very much. Tomorrow we are going to plan for the months ahead, and we can propose that our next Secretariat meeting takes place either in Egypt or in Jordan. If we decide for Egypt, we can see if when we are there in beginning of November, if we can visit some of the stopovers of the Sacred Family when they escaped to Egypt. We will have the opportunity to discuss all of this tomorrow, and then we will decide whether we'll go to Egypt or to Jordan. And as we are speaking of Jordan, we shall invite upon Walzouk. He's not here. Thank you very much. Sudan, Mrs. Teresa Yassa from Sudan.
Your Eminences, Secretary General of the I.A.O, advisors, ladies and gentlemen, with all respect to the title of each person separately, first of all, I would like to thank God for being among you today. However, my heart suffers for the events in Sudan since April. You know, the events between the Sudan army and the intervention force many Sudanese had to flee their country, and there was also internal displacement. And many people were entrapped within their own houses, unable even to fulfill their basic needs. Khartoum and other cities suffered a tragic situation, and day by day the population in Khartoum, the capital, is being decreasing because there is a lack of basic goods, and even bread is not enough, or fuel, because humanitarian aid cannot be dispatched, and humanitarian infrastructures have been destroyed. There is lack of safety, and when the rainfall starts in July, the situation will deteriorate, not to mention the likelihood of flooding after heavy rainfalls, so there will be further deterioration of the situation. The utopias of the warlords and their supporters have forgotten that no war conflict has ever been successful. There are many indications that they want to continue this war in Sudan for long, and this is mostly due to the geopolitical position of Sudan among 7 countries. This is the geopolitical position of Sudan, and based on a report by a UN mission, it was mentioned that the immediate intervention forces are responsible for destruction of churches and monasteries, rapes, attacks, raids in their area of control, and also for the exacerbation of violence in Darfur, while the army is responsible for the air attacks against the inhabited areas. Unfortunately, the response of the international community to what happens in Sudan is very, very limited. There has to be a link, there has to be some communication, some coordination in the efforts made by the Arab side, the African side, in order to stop or restrain the suffering of the Sudanese people. Given that the I.A.O. is focusing on the human rights during its 30 years of existence, I am making an appeal to the I.A.O. To take the initiative in cooperation with the European Parliament, with other allies and friends, in order to put an end to this situation in Sudan. And I would also like to call my counterparts, colleagues from other parliaments, to do something, to take some initiative in order for this conflict and not to grow into a civil war that will be a threat against regional security. So please pray for Sudan. Thank you.
Παρακαλώ τον κύριο Κέντς Πόλο, πρώην βουλευτή, μέλος της Διακοινοβουλευτικής.
Thank you. Now, former MP, member of the I.A.O. from Albania will take the floor. Thank you.
Chairman, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to attend this important meeting of our Assembly, not only because of the important anniversary we're celebrating, but also because at our focus are pressing societal and political issues that European societies and institutions are facing today. It seems that a growing moral confusion in the recent past has questioned and eroded values, norms, and beliefs that were inseparable from the historical building of Europe, from her proud tradition. Values, norms, and beliefs that are mostly related to the Christian faith. Neo-Marxist ideologies carried by intransigent political actors have weaponized genderism, migration, climate change fears. They are in the midway in their long march to national, European, and international institutions, not with the same pace in every place. In my country, Albania, we have more pressing problems, starting with rule of law, democracy, state capture, and so on. Since a month, we have set a negative precedent by having a political prisoner, Mr. Beleri. His only fault was to challenge in a democratic, legal way the ruling party in the mayoral race for the Himara municipality. Still, the culture wars are to be felt. Years ago, in the process of an EU-sponsored reform of the judiciary, some EU officials insisted on introducing the sexual orientation in the non-discrimination clause of the Constitution. It failed as the conservative opposition resisted it. But it would have opened the way to same-sex marriages in a form that the majority of the population and their elected parliamentarians would not have supported. This is an instance of how the vast powers of the Union can be used, which contrasts the generally positive impact of the European integration. Further, we see transgender characters being celebrated in Tirana murals funded by tax money, or Parent 1 and Parent 2 being introduced in kindergarten forms, replacing father and mother. I don't know whether our authorities believe in this, but certainly they want to endear themselves to the international elites pushing this ideology. This endearing helps them to retain power. However, there is a pushback, fortunately, and I'm very glad that our Assembly will work together with other bodies, such as the IPU and the COMESA, that address this meeting. And I hope also with our other like-minded organizations and initiatives. The Geneva Consensus, the ICLN come to mind. I think it is necessary, and we shall have faith that the good will prevail. Thank you.
Και εμείς θέλουμε να ευχαριστήσουμε το παλαιό μας και έμπειρο μέλος.
We want to thank again Spolo, our very old, faithful member, and we are very, very glad to have him here with us during this celebrating General Assembly. We want to, of course, cooperate with the Albanian Parliament, and to have the volume of Hagia Sophia in Albania. The Albanian language has worked hard and long together with the country's academia to this effect. I was very pleased to hear him denounce the imprisonment of the mayor of Himara, an Orthodox, who found himself in prison for no good reason. He was imprisoned in violation of all the rules of the rule of law. The other day, the municipal council was sworn in, but the mayor was not there. I want to believe that this unpleasant situation will be resolved shortly, and we shall go to Tirana in autumn in order to present the volume, the tomos of Hagia Sophia in the Albanian language. Jens has worked a lot for this tomos. Theodore Sekikumbo from Uganda, penultimate speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, the Secretary General, members of the I.A.O. It is with great pleasure that I extend to you the greetings and fraternity from the Parliament of Uganda. I'm glad to be here when we are celebrating the 30 years of I.A.O., facing new challenges before new perspectives. I'm proud to have been a member of the I.A.O. for the last 20 years. So I've grown with the I.A.O. in a way, and I'm happy that we've come this far. Mr. Chairman, a lot has been said about the European perspective, but kindly permit me to also relate the same to Africa and my country, Uganda. And I would highlight a few items. Recently in April, Uganda enacted the anti-homosexuality law and was assented to by the President. And since then, a lot has happened. And there has been reaction to Uganda for very unclear reasons. Contrary to the deliberate misinterpretation and bias, particularly in the Western media, the Anti-Homosexuality Act does not criminalize people who identify themselves as LGBT and queer. And I would like to use this opportunity to explain our position. It only criminalizes those involved in acts of homosexuality against the pedophiles, the young persons, against those who have a mental problem and the like. But we are surprised as a country to see that there has been harsh reaction to that. And this does not take into account the African setting. The African setting, and this law was very popular in the Ugandan Parliament. And it is only for those who used force against those who are not willing, against the spreading and the promotion of this anti-homosexuality. But the law itself does not criminalize someone because of his nature. We don't. It is only when it goes to those categories that I've mentioned. And whereas the European Union Commission has not yet announced sanctions, but on 30th of May, the European External Action Service, EEAS, invited the embassy in Brussels to express European disappointment at the signing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act and its repercussions on EU-Uganda relationship. And on the 2nd June 2023, this month, the Netherlands Minister of Foreign Affairs invited the Ugandan embassy to express their displeasure, as well as announcing the termination of the direct support to the gyros, that is the justice, law and order sector, amounting to euros 25 million. And it is this reason, Mr. Chairman, that I suspect my colleague, Honorable Nachimoli Eren, who would have been here, was conveniently denied the visa because we don't have the Greek embassy, but we apply through the French embassy. Unlike the usual practice, this time the visa application was put as way back as 11th of this month, and they could not get back to us. They could not tell us why they were not inviting her for the interview, for the visa. I'm only lucky to be here because I had a Schengen visa that had allowed me to attend the ACP, African, Caribbean, and Pacific European Union meeting in Brussels, and for her she was in Kampala, and that's how she was failed to attend this very important meeting. Mr. Chairman, Uganda as a country appreciates the concerns of our partners, but asks to take time to understand the Ugandan culture, the anti-homosexuality law brought by the people of Uganda, and it was for the people of Uganda. And really, in this context, we pray that we be understood in that context. Mr. Chairman, we've had also other setbacks as a country. You know, Uganda contributes to the AMISOM, the force that is in Somalia to fight against the ISIL and Al-Shabaab. But in May, on 25th, our forces were attacked by this Al-Shabaab. 54 of our gallant soldiers were killed. Uganda, as a poor country, cannot afford not to help another country. And last Friday, we also had an attack on our school in Western Uganda, where the ADF, who are also linked to ISIL, burnt a school, killing 42 pupils and abducting others. So those are the challenges we are facing as a country, but we are hoping to have the best. But Mr. Chairman, there are two major developments that have taken shape in Europe within these 30 years that deserve a brief comment. Mr. Chairman, from Spain in the west to Greece in the east, the catastrophe of thousands of lives lost in the Mediterranean cannot go unmentioned. Admittedly, Europe with open doors will be a Europe swallowed up, and this we take note. And even those coming have turned up to be radicalized. So really, even if I'm an African, I'm at crossroads. What should Europe do? You invite people, they get radicalized, and they become a problem to the host country. And this one is something really that we must address, those on whose doors they are knocking, Europe, but also we in Africa, where these thousands of people are running off from. Mr. Chairman, all life matter. Whether 1 or 5, there shouldn't be the untimely death of any human being. But considering the 5 lives lost when the submersible to the Titanic last week were wreckage, those who went to explore the wreckage, and there was an implosion, the 5 lives compared to the neglected boat carrying the 750 refugees off the coast of this hospitable country, Greece, is just unconscionable and raises deep moral questions. The 5 matter, but also considering the 750 who are said to have been lost at sea without anybody to help them. The effort made to rescue the 5 compared to that, which could have saved the 750, admittedly where 100 survived. Mr. Chairman, the last point is the ongoing destructive war in the civilized West and the most Christian Orthodox Europe between Russia and Ukraine. This is very unprecedented and very peculiar, bearing in mind that it is a fratricide war. For us in Africa, we have little to say about this, but couldn't there have been a way out, taking into account the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis into account? You remember when the Soviet Union had placed the missiles on Cuban island, and the US conducted a blockade, and after the diplomatic interventions, the Cubans withdrew, and peace prevailed in the world. Is it really a Russo-Ukraine war? But why to spill the Orthodox Christian blood, the irreplaceable churches, monasteries, and other forms of Orthodox identity? Just this afternoon, Mr. Chairman, I was watching, and the Ukraine was threatening to boycott the European Union meeting in Lithuania unless Europe become more serious to fight Russia militarily. Mr. Chairman, we hope reason should prevail. The long history and tradition of the Orthodox Church should prevail, particularly on those 2 brotherly countries. We can't afford to lose any more life on that. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and also being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Theodore Sekikoubo, member of our International Secretariat.
Είπε πολλά ενδιαφέροντα στην τοποθέτησή του.
He said many interesting things in his presentation. I would like to insist on the migration issue, given that the tragic accident that we had in the Sea of Pylos, southern Greece, with hundreds of dead people in that shipwreck, migrants who departed from Egypt and were heading to Italy. Unfortunately, the Mediterranean is the wet tomb for many migrants from Africa seeking a better fortune in Europe. So we may be criticizing Europe sometimes, but for the rest of the world, Europe seems to be heaven. Because there is freedom and democracy and polyphony, freedom of press, social state, infrastructures, and there are many people who seek to come to Europe. On the other hand, Europe is faced with a serious demographic problem, so Europe does need young people. So this means that Europe needs to move to two directions. First, to assess how many people do we need and ensure safe channels, secure channels for people that we do need in Europe. And second, combat the trafficking networks, because it is actually the traffickers who are responsible for all those shipwrecks and all those lives of innocent people lost in the Mediterranean. And the third component that we need to focus on as the European Union, Greece included, is how to tackle the causes, the root causes of migration. Because we have to address the problems in their roots, their sources. And unfortunately, as long as there are armed conflicts, as long as we have the effects of climate change, and as long as there is poverty in the world, people will be risking their lives to make this trip from Africa to Europe with all those hazards involved. Thank you, Secretary General. And now I shall give the floor to Mr. Alexander Chotric on behalf of Serbia.
Дамы и господа, наши личные воспоминания о трагических войнах и конфликтах на территориях бывшей Югославии не перестали быть очень яркими. И вот очередная война ведется в Европе и украинцами. Война на Украине производит страдания и разделения, но не только между этими двумя народами, но грозит страданиями и разделениями во всем мире и Европе. Европе также угрожает опасность эскалации военного конфликта из-за дискриминации сербов, Косово и Метохии. Они представляют собой наиболее угрожаемую этническую и религиозную группу на европейской земле.
Historical changes, tremendous progress and prosperity during its long development Europe has achieved above all as a Christian civilization.
Большинство людей, а также ежедневные нападения на сербов, сербскую православную церковь и собственность подтверждают, что сербский народ находится в крайне тяжелом положении. Тем более, что обстрелы происходят ежедневно, а реакция международного сообщества и органов власти в Приштине отсутствует. Но не сербы вызывают инциденты. Они просто хотят мира и соблюдения основных прав, гарантированных достигнутыми соглашениями.
Modern Europe and its new political paradigm embodied in the concept of the European Union, however, does not either mention Christianity in any of its fundamental document or give a Christian epithet attribute to any normative or institutional category. A recent European Commission directive on so-called inclusive or corrective communication even recommended avoiding words like Christmas. This approach overcomes the secular principle and indirectly reinforces the idea of post-religious or post-Christian Europe. Modern-day European Union systematically suppress Christian values from the public sphere, the media, from the school curricula. We are faced with the waves of new value systems that are often aggressively globally imposed with the aim of bringing down every existing natural and civilizational order.
Το λόγο έχει ο επικεφαλής της βουλγάρικης αντιπροσωπείας.
Mr. Tcholakov from the Bulgarian delegation. Radomir Tcholakov.
Yes, Radomir Tcholakov. Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I see I have 2 minutes left. Shall we finish 19:30? I will not waste the time of the conference and the patience of the colleagues. We have prepared a speech and it will be given to you for the protocol. Outside this speech, I would like to congratulate all of you on the 30th anniversary of the Interparliamentary Assembly, expressing our gratitude on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Daskalov, MP, the Bulgarian Parliament, to the Greek Parliament, to the Secretary General, Mr. Charakopoulos, and to the International Secretariat for the hospitality and excellent organization of this General Assembly. Allow me just one word, as I said outside the official speech. It have been talking a lot about the, how to call it, difficult position of the Christianity in Europe nowadays. It is true that we do live in strange times where the secular doctrines overruns the societies and seems to take advantage. Our legislations, the laws we are passing in our parliaments, are obviously penetrated by the so-called liberal ideas, often hitting the very roots of the societies and sometimes shaking values considered for centuries and untouchable. It seems that the faith is weakening, the believers becomes less and less, and the Christian tradition plays no more any role in Europe. Let me tell you that we, the citizens of the former communist countries, have seen this process once, and we know how it will end, how it ends. The communist regime had the perverse idea to destroy the church, from one hand through direct repression, but from other hand to undermining it from inside through mockery, neglecting, repelling the believers. We have already had this what you said, the Christian holidays was replaced by communist holidays. We had no Christmas, no Easter. And at once the communism collapsed and the church became stronger. It seemed that after the ruins of the communists, the Orthodox Church in the Eastern European countries and the other churches, of course, arises stronger. And this is the phenomenon of the church. We shall never forget. All the priests told me once that during the darkest times of the communism, the elder metropolitans have said to them, told to them, just to pray, just to serve the divine liturgy and to pray, and to care for nothing more. No social engagement, it was not allowed. No pranks, it was not allowed. Just to pray. And we have seen the result. And I'm pretty sure that the second attempt will end the same time, the same way. One last word we shall never forget. It is written in Lucas 12:32. Do not fear, little flock. Do not fear. I would like to rely just with one more word to what was said by the colleague from Uganda and other colleagues. Let us talk next days and in the Secretariat perhaps about the war in Ukraine. I have the feeling that this organization have huge potential for diplomacy in this case, and I would like to hear your opinion next day and in the other days, how we can combine our efforts, our strength, our possibilities to help in one or another way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear colleague from Bulgaria. And we shall finish with a co-worker of the Parliamentary Assembly from the Center of Ecumenical, Apostolic and Environmental Studies, Mr. Nikos Dimitriadis.
I'll speak in English. Thank you very much for the possibility and for the honor to be here. Congratulations for the meeting. Just three things I would like to say. All the speakers described so accurately, I would like to sum up the challenges and the situations we're facing in Europe. If I would like to sum up, right, so I believe that we have the inability, because certainly Europe is not lacking Christian values. I think we have the inability, or we cannot find yet ways to inform Europeans, mostly the youth, that all those words that are written in the background are actual Christian values. So first requirement would be to first do a self-criticism. Second would be a responsible religious leadership. And by that, I don't mean only the church hierarchs, but I mean everyone in this room that feels the responsibility to promote the Christian values. And third, and most important, is actions, to find ways to create projects and actions that unite us, both in ecumenical and in an interfaith level. Each one of you in this room, members of the Parliament, has a huge potential and has a huge responsibility. So if we consider Europe our home, we should all feel this responsibility and act. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before giving the floor to Mr. Mygdalis, who is going to recap the proceedings of our assembly, I shall give the floor to Mr. Quaz for 1 minute. For 1 minute. Thank you very much. I just want to inform you that His Beatitude, his Patriarch of Jerusalem has asked me to convey his blessings and best wishes, and also that he will be interested in conveying to you latest developments in Jerusalem. They condemned the burning down in Sweden of the Holy Koran. There are 4 patriarchates, and there is a communique issued by the Patriarchate of Jerusalem denouncing the burning of the Holy Koran, which is inadmissible because it is a sacred symbol. Mr. Mygdalis, you have the floor, and thank you. I shall attempt to summarize the very interesting things that we've heard today, especially by people outside this assembly, things that will be of great usefulness to the MPs. Among so many interesting things, however, we may have lost somewhat the target. Where is our target? Shall take things from the beginning. How did this story start? It started when we began discussing the dialogue, and then we started trying to find out who would be the parties to this dialogue. We said a couple of things. Dialogue does not only concern the EU or Europe, it concerns the whole world, because it is very serious what happens in Europe. And we wanted other interparliamentary associations or unions to take part and consult with the IPU, because Europe is the heart of the world. It didn't happen. The second thing we said was that it was the bodies, the agencies of the civil society, citizen groups that believe in Christian values, and let them express these Christian values. Do not tell them that those who believe in environment protection go and discuss about it in the appointed environment protection group. Christian values are standalone pillars. They're not just values, they are Christian values. It's one thing fighting for human rights, and one of the Christian values are the human rights. It is generalities or generalizations in a world rid of religious oppression are usually the explanation, the expression of our will to get rid of the weight put upon our shoulders by different value systems. So in a world where values will be determined ad hoc, in a world like this, the future will be brighter. In other words, not discuss about institutions like family. Let's not talk about the exploitation of human beings by human beings, and so on. So if there is something that we need to defend, is Christian values, clearly. It's not that we are defending something that we consider holy or sacred. We believe that Christian values are good for the future of society. The church may see things in under a different light, but political power thinks that the Christian values are beneficial for the future of Europe, for the future of the world. And we don't want to delete those values. What can be done from now on?
I think it was mentioned by the representative of COMECE. He has set a framework, and I think we can agree on this. Now, in view of the European elections, I think we should have some contacts with the major parties, the major European parties. Those contacts, of course, will be carried out by all those involved, engaged in this cause of the European future, either churches or political associations or civil society. Europe Together, for example, I repeat, is a major organization. So in those contacts, we can raise this matter and try to understand which are the mechanisms, apart from what we are saying and trying to interpret things and why things happen. We should also explore the mechanisms moving such things. Because, you know, MPs are very busy. So which are the mechanisms that shape the positions? What are the centers? What are the think tanks behind all that? We have to detect, identify them, and tell them, you know, regardless of what you want and what we want, the Europe that emerges is a Europe with phobias, phobic syndromes against the unknown, the future, which is coming fast, and you cannot disperse such syndromes. And citizens become instruments exploited by extreme opinions which are deeply anti-European. So you are not defending Europe when you are trying to abolish or eliminate or delete the concept of Christian values. So let's hold a discussion with them, identify them and see what is their goal, and also hold a discussion with the political parties and see how we can give a message through some partnership, and how we can set some requirements, some prerequisites for the dialogue on the upcoming European elections. For those who believe in Christian values, we don't need to proceed with further clarification and analysis. We don't need to start discussing what is the meaning of a value in this matter or the other. History knows, and churches know, and theologians know from the osmosis of so many years. So whoever wishes to find the values can find them. We just need to remind people. And in this context, we need to recall that the Christian values have to be part of the European future. Thank you. Some procedural information. We will go for dinner immediately, and then after dinner at 9:30 we have a music event, a concert. There are chairs that have been placed already, and you can enjoy the concert. Tomorrow we are starting our meeting at 9. The morning session tomorrow is exclusively for parliamentarians who are members of the I.A.O. Other guests and friends can enjoy the premises of the hotel. And then in the afternoon we shall have the closing session and reference to the establishment of the I.A.O., which is a session for everyone. Thank you.